Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to TechGig's virtual panel discussion on budding tech careers. I am Yojana Sharma, and I am your host for today's absolutely fantastic webinar where we'll be talking about tech careers, tech hiring, what it takes to get included in a tech company, and upskilling, of course. I have a stellar panel to talk about career tips for budding developers. India's biggest community, TechGig, keeps hosting these discussions among industry biggies to bring you insights on what's new, trending in the job recruitment and upskilling space. The demand of highly skilled developers has been increasing year on year, but the road to becoming the best, not just skilled developer, but the best one, is a tough one. People keep talking about upskilling. There are newer languages coming in, newer tech skills are in demand, and of course, new technology companies are coming up every now and then, making it very difficult for an employee to choose who could be the apt employer for them. If you are starting out as a developer in a career, you may be overwhelmed with the choices that you have today. You may have a fear of coding exams, assessments, which relevant career choices to make, how to upskill, and who should be my apt career or a career mentor in my workplace. There are several ways to overcome these fears. To answer some of these questions, we've curated a fantastic panel to answer some of your queries. I'm delighted to have with me Prajita Nair, Vice President, BNY Mellon Technologies, Quality Engineering India, Karan Venkatesh, Senior Manager, International DevRel GitHub, Tejus Venkatesh, Head Developer Relations, Gupshup, and another Karan Bakshi, Talent Acquisition Head at Michelin. Thank you, Prajita, Karan Venkatesh, Karan Bakshi, and Tejus for joining us today. Meanwhile, here's a cue for our audience. Please keep all your questions ready and ask this fantastic panel on the go in your chat session. We will pick the most relevant questions on this forum in between our conversations. Without much ado, let's quickly get onto the topic and let's hear from these fabulous gentlemen and women on what they know about tech careers. My first question is about what is the first impression for a techie today? In our times, it used to be resumes. A decade ago, a resume would be your passport to a professional life. What's the scenario today? To answer this, I'd like to have a comment from Karan Bakshi, and gradually I'll move to the other panelists.
Great. Thank you, Yojana, and welcome all. Very good afternoon. I'm Karan Bakshi. And as rightly said, still we are in the CV phase wherein CV is one of the most important thing. And I would say one size doesn't fit all. So in case you want to make a really impressive CV, it has to be really short and crisp. Talk much about your experience in precisely on the domain specific projects, what you worked in. At times we have, as an HR professional, we have seen CVs going up to 8 or 9 pages as well. Trust me, that doesn't nobody has time to look at those 8 to 10 page CVs. But it has to be really precise. It has to be tailor-made as per the need of the job description, as per the need of the company, right? Also, good to include a nice cover letter, right, which will have some precise pointers and what have been your achievements, right? What challenges, what solutions have you been provided? And the most important is it has to be visually good looking. Right? I've seen some fantastic CVs, right? Those, but there has been a challenge in terms of reading them or really going through them. So also nowadays we talk about AI, and a lot of companies are using AI in matching your CVs, getting the right fitment done. So you have to use the right keywords what you have done, because AI picks up those keywords and then shortlists your CV, right? So using those keywords, the proper spacing, the proper alignment, and the most important is you have to proofread your CVs, right? When you do that, spell mistakes are absolutely no, right? That talks about much about a candidate, right? How much time they've invested in their CV. So I would say it has to be a crisp, short, and a smart one. And always, proofread when you're writing emails, you're submitting your applications, right, to different recruiters through LinkedIn or through emails, right? It has to be a very crisp one. The email has to be very precise, stating your need for this job and how you can bring a value add. And always think one important thing: is the job description, what you see is a problem and you are the solution, right? So once you look at in that way, you get the best CV of yours. So that's just to start with, Yojana. Thank you.
All right. I think the cue here is that if you present yourself like the solution to which the company is seeking I think that will help you crack the code here. Another follow-up question for you, Karan, is that earlier there used to be a lot of talk about 2-page CVs, 3-page CVs, cover letters, and all. So does that hold true for tech skills? Because I'm assuming, and our experience with tech recruiters say that skills is the first thing that should come on top. So rest of the things can probably go a little beneath. So what's your take on that?
My say would be when we talk about the techies, right, putting in their CVs, it has to be more projecting their project, what they have done, right, what has been their contribution to that particular project, and domain specific, right, in case specific domain they want to highlight, and obviously the skills, right, whatever skills like JScript, jQuery, JSON, right, or maybe in C++, C Sharp. So whatever the skills they want to highlight, that has to be precisely highlighted. And with the correct, in a single company, someone would have worked on multiple projects, right? But how do you highlight them, right? One of the best projects, you have to put it in the first row, then second, then third. So how do you highlight the best of your achievements? That will really help because once the tech recruiter does the screening, right, the CV goes to the technical panel, right? And technical panel is very sharp, right? They have been doing that. So they want to be really precise and check, okay, is that the person, doing what they need, right? Or can they, do they have something which they can, that would be a base skill on which they can teach the person something new skill. So it has to be a combination of your domain, the skill set, and ideally it should be maximum 2 pages, right? 3 pages in case a person has very good experience, right? But precisely it has to be summing up in maximum 2 pages.
All right, thank you so much for an elaborate note there. I have a couple of follow-up questions, but probably let's move on to Tejus at this point of time. Developers are often afraid of the technical rounds, and sometimes they're unable to express their knowledge in the right way, which probably leads to rejection or an understanding that there's a talent gap somewhere. How should one prepare for interviews and avoid such unwanted situations?
Yeah, thanks, Yojana, for that question. I think it's quite a lengthy one. I will try to be as crisp as possible. I'm Tejus Venkatesh, by the way. I was the chief technical evangelist at a company called as UiPath, and now I lead developer relations for a conversational AI leader called as Gupshup, a very proud Indian unicorn. Just before going on to this question of rejection, I think everybody should treat interview as a mutual ground of respect. I mean, as Karan was mentioning, right? A JD is a problem, and what we are trying to see through in an interview is that can you bring some skills onto the table that can help the organization solve it, right? So literally, these technical interviews are not to reject you. That's the perception that we should first move out from, and make it as an iterative process to solve a problem that the JD has explained. So approach any given technical problem with your analytical skills. Try to solve iteratively, solve a part of it, probably go to the core of that problem and try to solve that problem with your analytical skills. Break it down, divide and conquer. Use any methods that you would know, either brute force or the most optimal. Don't try to get to the most optimal solution right from the beginning. What the technical evaluators is trying to look at is, can you solve this problem? It's not about how quickly or how optimally can you solve this problem in the right go, in the first go. I don't think Elon Musk came up with Tesla in the first iteration. Neither did we go to Mars in the first iteration. So take it slow, get into the brute force, understand the problem really well, validate your understanding with the technical recruiter first. Am I getting the problem right? Then solve the most easiest one, low-hanging problem first, and then iteratively build on. And I'm sure if the interviewer is genuine enough, they will see the approach that you are taking. They will see the analytical skills that you are using. And whenever you hit the roadblock, explain the roadblock. Why is that roadblock is coming, right? I mean, like, are there any ways to work around this problem, etc. So I think that's the premise. The premise is to find a solution to the problem. Don't bother too much about syntax. Nobody knows the syntax, right? Like, use command space if you are on Eclipse or Visual Studio, right? And the programming language also never matters, according to me. And I think this panel can also tell you the same. But just adding on to the previous point from Karan, and probably I will be talking for Karan MV as well. When you are building up your resume, while it has to be beautiful and visual, we all live in the social world. So don't forget to mention your social handles, whether it is LinkedIn to Twitter to Karan MV, GitHub, because I think you live and breathe. The tech folks live and breathe on GitHub. If you have done any projects, any open source projects, any contributions in the communities, any certificates, yeah, flaunt them in. Yeah, since it cannot be more than a page, it's always easy to point out to your socials, where I'm sure there's going to be much more descriptions. And I think GitHub is a very good place. Thanks, Karan, by the way.
Thank you so much. I think we've got 2-3 pearls of wisdom here with you mentioning about social handles and all of those things. I have a couple of follow-up questions. I'll probably park them for a while. Meanwhile, my request to all the audiences, please keep posting your queries in the chat box. I can see a couple of queries flowing in there. I'll pick up the best queries. Meanwhile, I'll quickly move on to the rest of the two panelists. I would now like to speak to probably Prajita Nair. Developers who are not abreast with cutting edge skills or have a career gap. You know, we've spoken about how to probably prep up all your resume and all of those things. But how do you mitigate things like probably a career gap or an absence from work for some time, or the fact that that you're not so abreast with the cutting edge technologies that people are generally checking for? Could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, hi Yojana, and a very good afternoon to all the virtual attendees right out there, and good afternoon to my co-panelists as well. It was great to hear some beautiful thoughts from Tejus and Karan as well. It's a very interesting question as such, Yojana, because reskilling and upskilling, in technology world is very essential, right? Change is definitely very constant in life, and I think and I believe that IT jobs landscape is also no exception to it. Recently when I was just reading an article in the Global Economic Forum, the way or the trend in which the industry is moving is rapidly building your software and releasing it to the production with cool stuffs and cool features to the customers, right? And there is no other way other than the developers upskill or reskill. Now when we talk about upskilling or the reskilling part of it, it's quite interchangeable, because upskilling is mostly towards your domain in which you're working on. For example, a web UI developer might want to upskill from Flex to Angular and now to React.js or Native.js, which are the latest technology on the web world. Similarly, on the backend or any other domain that we are working on, right? Reskilling is more sort of a more investment on time, because you want to change your lanes or switch your lanes from the role that you are playing as such. I would definitely want to share one of the experience I had in terms of skill transformation. Probably for interest of all, I am a vice president quality engineering in BNY Mellon, which is Bank of New York Mellon Technologies India, and I have a career trajectory of 18 years in the IT world or the IT industry, where I was leading in terms of transforming into agile, moving more into a skill transformation. I'm also part of the WIT community, which is the Women in Technology within the organization, who constantly think of elevating the women who are, kind of returning home after a career break, giving them more opportunities within the organization. So, I just wanted to share one experience which is purely on the skill transformation side. Couple of years back, right, when we were more in terms of developing softwares in a waterfall kind of model where products are released only in a month or in 2 months, but then with the rapid change in order to meet the skill gap, right, because companies are transforming, companies need a workforce that can rapidly put changes into production. In terms of that, there was a need to upskill the entire team. Like, we need to evolve as a team in terms of upgrading our the entire team skill set in order to meet that particular demand which we had, right? It was definitely a long journey where every competency, right from a developer to a program manager, whether you are a quality assurance, everybody had to evolve and change. But I think that change was definitely for good, because the things that we were able to deliver earlier, but now it's almost 3 times more, right, faster in pace. We are able to meet all the demands that we have in terms of our customer base. So I think upskilling and reskilling is definitely a skill that has to be there for whether you are a developer or any domain that you are into. Just like physically you need to exercise, I think even mind needs that activeness, and the only way to do that is constant learning and development, right? And I think that's the only way that you can sharpen your memory, basically. So I am completely into upskilling or reskilling the domain in which you are working on, whether you are a front-end developer or a back-end developer or even a full stack engineer needs to upskill every now and then.
Prajita, I have a follow-up question on this, which is how do you appropriately put it up in your resume and how do hiring managers perceive probably the upskilling or the career breaks or the sabbaticals and all? Is it okay in today's time, or are there still subset questions for the candidates?
It is definitely okay, at least when we are talking about sabbatical. It is definitely okay to put that right away in the resume, to be very transparent enough with the employer. There are justifications when you're going for sabbatical, whether it's a returning mother or any other personal reasons that you are in, but that has to be followed with the effort that you have put in order to bridge the gap in terms of skill set, right? There are different ways, right, in which you can bridge that gap in terms of giving, like I think Tejus was mentioning about GitHub, right? Develop code, push it in GitHub and show the application that you have developed, put it on the resume, right? Give links to the GitHub, or there are blogs, right? You can contribute to the open source or different blogs where you are helping instantly to actually code and help your co-worker or peers to code. And I think it's absolutely okay to put about your sabbatical or a career break, but it has to be definitely followed up with what you have put or what effort has been put in terms of upskilling, right? It could be attending Udemy courses, it could be attending your webinars or podcast, or anything that effort has been put to actually upskill. I think that definitely matters in the resumes.
Thank you so much, Prajita. I think that's the biggest takeaway here is that, it's okay to take breaks, but it's also at the same time making an effort to probably learn newer things and make sure that you are up there and you're learning those things. I'll quickly move on to Karan. I've been wanting to speak to him for long now. Karan, Muthya, Venkatesh. Since we are speaking of technology, it's such an evolving space. Every 6 months, 8 months, a newer technology, a newer way of dealing with things will come up. So how does one choose the right technology or stack or programming languages to make sure that he has a long career in his workplace?
Thanks, Yojana, and again, welcome all for the fourth time for being here. I'm Karan, and I lead international developer relations at GitHub. Coming to your question, Yojana, I think most of them, I think 6 months and 8 months is a long time. There's kind of a running joke within the JavaScript developer community that every time you wake up in the morning and look at what's new, there's going to be a new JavaScript framework. And I think that's true most of the time because it's so fast and moving. I think there is no silver bullet to it in terms of what's the technology which you are supposed to choose, etc. It's almost a necessity, I would say, that as a developer you need to be polyglot and kind of work with multiple technologies, and it really kind of fits in well with how applications and software works these days, right? I mean, a lot of the cloud native softwares are built using microservices, so it doesn't really matter. Even within a same application, within a same software, there's one piece that's written in Python, there's one piece that's written in Go, there's one piece written in JS, etc., in just a single application, working together. So it needs to be somewhat similar, and I think what's really important is what differentiates each one of them. I've seen many developers who are starting off saying that, oh, there is this new thing, let me just go and then use this, and then the next is like, oh, there is this new thing, let me go and use that. It's more about understanding that, okay, this technology, whatever it is, when I say technology, it could be a language, it could be a framework, it could be a library or whatever it is. What are its strengths? What can it do well? And what is it really good for? And if you know about that, I think, and if you are able to kind of really approach whatever you are writing, the code or whatever application you're doing, if you kind of approach it the right way and then use a proper technology that will help solve it, that would be I think a win for many of the developers. For example, there are still some applications where PHP would be a good fit. People might think that, oh, PHP, like my grandfather used to use it or whatever it is. But there are still some applications where, it's a good fit. Similarly, many people might think that, hey, things like Ruby, like, hey, who uses Ruby anymore? Or why is it? Because there's JavaScript and Go and everything else. Like GitHub is built on Ruby and still runs on Ruby on Rails and has a whole lot of other things, which is built on Go, JavaScript, and multiple other things. So similarly, I use PHP for few things, Python for few things, Go for few things, Ruby for few things, etc. Because each language or each framework has its own strengths, and it's really dependent on the problem that you're trying to solve and whether this really fits into that. So in short, TLDR is that being a polyglot and kind of understanding what are the strengths and weaknesses of each language or each framework and what kind of a problem it really helps address really well, it's going to be important. And second is being able to transfer some of those knowledge and skills that, this is how you're supposed to do, for example, in Python, but it doesn't make the same sense, and having that paradigm shift to do in different languages. So that's really important.
I think we had some clear takeaways from here that you've got to be polyglot even in programming languages. We have a very active audience. My dashboard has been filling up with questions. I'm just taking the first one. I think it's a cue from what Karan spoke on resumes, etc. So there's a question from Duram E, and he says that for people who've had 10 years plus years of experience, so how do you show your past experiences? Like, do you just mention them in passing references, or do you just eliminate them? And what about the smaller experiences, the shorter stints that you've had in your workplaces?
Okay, so Yojana, I'll take this question. Karan, Bakshi here from Michelin Digital Center. So
yes.
no experience is a small experience, right? Everywhere you learn something, right? Maybe it's a smaller stint or a shorter stint, maybe a smaller company or a bigger brand. So everywhere you learn something. And just to add to Prajita, right? If you have a gap, don't worry. It happens, right? It's absolutely okay to be transparent. So if you have a 10 years or 15 or 18 years experience, right? You are now talking, always think in terms of, going a descending order. That is what, is preferred, right? Because that's how you've been grown and you've been hired for that particular experience, right? So descending order always works the best. So where have you been working and what's the larger role you're taking? And then you can shorten the experiences what you have to make the CV more precise and crisp. So talk more about what you have learned, what you have moved ahead as a leader, right? What you have really showcased your potential at, that'll really help you. So the trick here is to talk about the descending first, right? Let's say, if you have 18 years experience, right, and you're speaking to a recruiter, it'll be irrelevant for the recruiter or the interview panel as well to go 18 years back what you've done, right? Obviously that's important, right? But what you're doing right now is the most relevant, right? And that is what you're being hired for. So talking about that relevant part is the most important.
All right, I think relevant is what you should be going for. I have a question from Justin here. He's said that, between specialist and a generalist, which one should a developer go for, or what should be the approach? I think it's a question that's on everybody's mind, because at times we are asked to learn many things, and at times we are asked to probably know a little bit of everything. Probably Tejus or Prajita can.
I'll take a stab first, and I think it is kind of continuation of what we were speaking about reskilling, and also about like which is the technology that I should learn, and should I be a generalist or should I be a specialist? Again, there is no one size that fits all. We will, as technology companies, as service companies, as software companies, everywhere, would need both generalist and specialist. So it's not either or for an organization's perspective. From your own perspective, I think first we need to get the fundamentals right either way, right? And then you need to get the depth, at least in one technology or at least one function, one domain. You cannot be a generalist just by studying 16 subjects or 24 subjects in an engineering course. You still need to pick your one favorite subject or one area of expertise where you have deep expertise. You know the goods, you know the bads, you know the ugly spots, and you know how the workarounds, right? So even if you are going to be a journalist, you have to have that one deep skill. And I think technology companies and product companies and other companies will honor both the likes of these two. So get the fundamentals right, choose one thing which you love the most and you can be extremely confident about, and the rest of things are cherries.
I think thanks, Tejas. I'm sorry, Yojana. I just wanted to share. My thoughts. Definitely, I just wanted to share, or add upon what Tejas was rightly mentioning about. I think it's very important to get your basics right. Once your basics, which is more of your logical thinking or your critical thinking ability, to transform any problem statement that is given to you in terms of a solution. It could be, as I think Karan was also mentioning, technologies keep changing, right? Today we have something, tomorrow it should be something else, but the crux of it is your critical thinking ability, or thinking out of the box and providing innovative solutions. I think the focus for any developer, irrespective of your experience, should be on that path, and mixing your technical ability with the core values and behavior. I think that's also very important. When we talk about a DevOps engineer, right, who is a mix of your technical ability as well as interpersonal skills, right? I think that combination probably might work for one set of engineers. It might not work for the other set who might want to go into a deep specialized area, probably AI, ML, or data science or data analytics who are more good in terms of analyzing data. So it purely depends on figuring out what is your strength and building upon it. I think that essentially is what is needed. To basically come to a conclusion whether you want to take a specialized path or a generic kind of path.
Okay, let's quickly hear it from Karan because I have a pile of questions for you guys. It's a very popular panel. I had predicted this right at the beginning. Karan, quickly from you, and then I can take some other questions.
Yeah, just 3 points on this. I want to add into what Tejus mentioned. Like 5 years ago, I'd invented, this kind of a phrase which says that you need to be a jack of all trades, but a master of one, not none, but one. That's how I like to call it as. And the second point is, I think like how Tejus also rightly mentioned, you need to be a special generalist. You need to be good at some of the other things and kind of know the lay of the land of what's really happening with other teams and other technologies that's being worked on. But you should be the go-to person on one thing that is really very important and people really look up to you for. And the third thing is I want to draw parallels to this with some of the other professions if you look at it, right? For example, if you look at any practicing, doctor right now, they always go through the general course of, probably having their bachelor's in one thing and then master's in one thing and then go ahead and then, specialize, right? And so if you think about it, like, why are they doing all of the other general studies if they want to specialize on one thing? Because you need to know your system as a whole, right? And then kind of go deep into one thing. So think of it in a very similar way when you are approaching as a developer. You need to kind of know the whole system as a whole and get to know how things work, and then kind of specialize and go deep into one thing.
All right, thank you so much,
one
Karan.
point here, right? Specialist generally, that's a very good one, Karan and Tejus. One important thing is, right, as you grow ranks, right, the most important thing which you need to acquire with your generalist or specialist is people management ability, right? People management skill, right? Obviously, there are very limited roles when you become principal consultant or a principal architect. There will be limited opportunities, right? But at the end, right, you have to get into people management scope, right? You might be very rigid that I want to be a very individual contributor. Many of you, right, I can see some smiles here, but you will have to have that people management skill. So as in when you get an opportunity, start acquiring people management skill is the most important, right? Which is a good combination. Maybe you're a specialist or a generalist. So complement to that with a people management skill.
All right, Karan, I would like to get back to you with another question here. Sanjana Gattareddy, she's mentioning about for an SDE who has not done any projects as such, but has participated in many coding competitions. How should those skills should be mentioned?
This is for Karan Muthya or Karan Bakshi?
Karan Bakshi. Let's hear it from Karan Bakshi first.
Okay, so it's not about experience, right? Experience obviously does matter, but it's also about when a technical interviews go to look at you, it also look at your smartness, right? How you're able to, what's your ability to, at least try to go for that code, right? Even if you're not getting the right answer, but are you doing it the right way? Are you going to the right ways to get the solution, right? Are you able to reach at the solution? So you have to be able to convince the person right in front of you what you bring onto the table, what is the value add, and how you are solution oriented, not a problem oriented person, right? So you look at a problem and you find a solution, right? So in that regards, even if you don't have a hands-on experience on a live project working, done some coding, but if you have done some great coding, right? Obviously, TechGig, right, does a lot of hackathons, right? We've been a part of a lot of hackathons what TechGig does, and there's a lot of hiring, right? A big database which gets created, a lot of candidates get opportunities in different companies with their codes, right? So those are not the live codes, right? But that shows your ability, what you can do. So obviously, if you have done a lot of coding on a lot of hackathons or a lot of different platforms, it's going to be a value add, absolutely.
All right, and probably I'll take up the next question since it's directed towards Prajita. It's by a person called Rakesh Ranjan. He said, hello, ma'am. I have 2 decades of experience in armed forces and I've completed my MCA and MBA now. So what roles can I explore in the tech industry? I think it's in retaliation to your returnee programs and other things that you were mentioning.
Yes, apparently, right. There are companies which go for and I don't know why, but in recent times from armed forces there are who wants to get into the IT industry. There are different options that can be explored because number one, as I was mentioning about the behavioral driven personality, that is also equally important. I think from a reskilling perspective, because this view a person coming from that background will definitely have to kind of reskill and understand what is the path that has to be chosen, whether going into a program management kind of area where you have more ability to actually groom people, right? Because that is the background from which you are coming in, and applying certain technical or critical thinking abilities to actually build softwares, that would definitely be a good career path which people who are coming from armed forces can definitely think of.
All right, I have a question which I want
I think
probably
Tejus
Tejus.
wanted to
Yeah,
add on
Tejus. Yeah,
something.
please carry on. Please add on here,
Yeah.
and I have a question ready for you.
Yeah, quickly, I don't have too much to add on from what Prajita said, but thanks to the person who has asked the question. Thanks for your service in the armed forces, and I think it's an extension of your service in Indian IT industry. IT in general has given us so much to this country. It has helped us democratize technology and jobs, and trying to get us to more equal foot on the world. So I hope and I wish you all the very best in this endeavor also, and I'm sure that you're going to add more service to our country. Thanks.
So just to add on, right, in
Yeah.
diversity and inclusion, right, we talk about diversity in, having more and more women on leadership boards, right? But diversity and inclusion is not only for women, right? It is for many other, right? The neurodiversity, right? Then the returnship programs, like people who are on break. Obviously, armed forces, one of the Army veteran program is a very big program. A lot like for Michelin as well, we have a very dedicated program for Army veteran, which we have kickstarted. And to be precise to your question, right, what roles you can get into is operations, right, business analyst, right, delivery, program management, project management. These are some key skills wherein we need people like you, Mr. Ranjan, and you are most welcome, right? Many companies are wanting to have, they have a specialized portal wherein you see Army veteran program and dedicated portal for the veterans of our country, right? So most happy to have you.
All right, I think he would have got your answers. And quickly, Tejus, the question for you was, I'm a AI ML guy with 1.5 years experience. I'm wanting to explore AR, VR, cloud, and latest technologies now. So what's your suggestion on going about it? I think he's looking for a possible transition plan or something. Just 2 or 3 pointers that you could help him with.
Cool. I think the industry is in any which way, whether it is AI, ML or AR, VR are actually growing and growing exponentially. We are at the tip of the iceberg, whether in terms of AI, ML adoption in enterprises. We've been speaking about this for quite a while, and I think Prajita, Karan can definitely agree with this. It's not as new as we feel. It's been there for a while. It's just about the time when enterprises will start adopting. And the same is with AR, VR, especially the AR segment, because thanks to the pandemic as well, right? Like it all of a sudden you start realizing the potential or the necessity to have these technologies. I'm not an expert in AR, so I wouldn't probably have anything more to add, but just to say that it's actually on the right path, and it's going to grow. It's going to grow exponentially. So yeah, pick your.
All right, I think point noted. He would have got a couple of insights from here. And a big thank you coming down from Mr. Rakesh Ranjan for this panel. He's saying that thank you for taking up my questioning and answering it in so much of length. Last question that I'm going to take up right now for Karan Muthya it's from a person, Palak Mishra. She's saying, how do you get into a tech giant? I think she's meaning a tech multinational with just 1 to 2 years experience. How do you ensure that people trust your skills and tech talent?
Good question. It's see, I think I can speak at least for GitHub and also some of the very similar organizations out there is more than the number of years of experience, right? A lot of the organizations, especially when it comes to developers, are looking at their actual work. In fact, I hear from many of them. I was talking to the co-founder and CEO of one really big organization which is a backer of a big open source project. And he was telling me that whenever they go ahead with a hire of a developer by looking just at their GitHub profile and the code, 80 to 90% of the time they feel they made a good choice, because what it essentially is you kind of skip through a whole lot of process and you look at it's just like show me the code, and then you'll get an idea. Even right now, I think many organizations still do that when it comes to an engineering manager looking at it, or anyone else, an engineering team lead looking at it, etc. That once you get to see what the person is actually working on, it could be a lot more better and a lot more advanced than what very seasoned professionals are working on. So in fact, I want to share that there are a whole lot of open source projects that are coming up in India, and many people would be surprised that the student community is very, very, very active on that. People who are just in their second years, third years, fourth year, etc., who are not even kind of like looking out and applying, getting tons and tons of offers because they're doing so very well just by developing projects on open source which are being used across the world. In fact, I have an interesting stat to share as well, that if you look at probably just the last year or kind of like up to now, there were more than 10 million software projects that are dependent on packages created in India. That is the scale, right? And if you look at who is creating all of these packages that 10 million software projects are using, it's all developers, right? From a 13-year-old, a 16-year-old, and an 18-year-old to even who is someone who is retired and is wanting to give back in open source and things like that. So in a nutshell, what I would suggest is make your work more seen when it comes to your side projects, what you're contributing to open source or hobby projects, etc. And then automatically people will start noticing that, hey, you're doing far more than what a 1 or 2 year experienced developer might be able to do. And then you'll get much bigger opportunities and have more doors thrown open.
All right, thank you. Answered in as much depth as it could be. A lot of our time has gone into picking up questions, but I'd like to bring this panel back to the original course of discussion. I have a question which I would say it's question 101. How can a developer ensure they are on the right career path while choosing a technology career? Now, right here would vary as per your experience, as per the trends, and as per the technology that's in vogue. I'd like to have a comment on this from everybody in this panel. And let's hear it from Tejus probably, and then go up to the other panelists.
Sure, I'll try to be as apolitical as possible. The definition of right is a big question, right? However, again, it's not one size that fits all. Technology is changing, the world is changing. I don't know what I'm going to do in 6 months. So if Karan, Bakshi, or Prajita are asking questions like what are you going to do 5 years later from now in your interviews, you should be quite honest and say you don't know. That's the reality. So however, I think you have to be cognizant of where are we heading as technology and businesses. So one key thing is to, while we are all core tech folks, mostly the tech folks in this audience panel, and we are extremely proud of skills and the technologies that we bring onto the table, you should understand the business that your companies are doing, or the companies in your target list of companies are doing, and that is only when you can be more valuable, because it's always mutual, right? Like, you can have a great career only when your prospect company is having a great, fabulous business outcome. So be privy of those trends and what's happening. And unfortunately, we don't think too much about the customers, right? Like, if you are building a software app for a bank, try to think from the bank's user, because you are also one of the user. If you are building something on Swiggy, think on when you are hungry and when you're ordering something, and it's the same thing. So start thinking from business, also from customers' perspective, and look at that macro trend that is happening in tech and business, and that's when you can be more valuable to the growth of that tech / business / consumer in general. So I don't think there is one single silver bullet, as Karan MD mentioned, right? So in terms of technology, there's no one single technology. In terms of should you be generalist or specialist, there's no one single answer. Yeah, I mean, even after probably 45 minutes of all the panelists speaking, you would have gotten the same answer. So be on the lookout for the trends and upskill and reskill as and when needed, and then yeah, career is going to be awesome.
All right, probably let's move on to Prajita. I think she has a point to make here.
Yeah, I mean, just echoing to what Tejus was mentioning about, for any developer career, right? It's more important that you build applications or softwares that are scalable, that those which are very resilient to the needs, and those which are very reliable to any kind of changes in terms of technology or in terms of business demands that is there at present in the organization. Because as I had mentioned, organizations are going through digitization, and bridging that gap is definitely the most important thing. So from a right career perspective, adding value to what you deliver, and that meets the demand of the organization, I think that's very important. And the main part of it is building scalable solutions, is what my thought is about.
So quickly, Karan, Bakshi, what would be right for a developer in today's day and scenario?
Let me touch base on today's day, which is, which we say the great resignation or the great hiring, right? And the most important as a keyword, the key to happiness is, stop comparing, right? A lot of people get into the comparison mode, what my friend is doing or what my friend has been doing, where he or she has reached. That's a different, we need to cut that off. Everybody has different milestones, right? And every company has a different title, right? Different role. So your friend would be working for a captive, you would be working for a service organization, right? So there would be a difference of title or a different of role. But the most important thing is, are you doing what you're supposed to do, right? It's not only about the vertical growth, right? It's also about the horizontal growth, right? What all skills have you been accomplished of, right? What are you able to deliver, right? What is the value add you even to put? And stability, right? I would say is a key here again, right? What stability you bring into the table, right? Obviously, every organization will also need time to give you that role or position. But the most important is how put value add you put in, and age and experience is just a number, right? So you would have 3 years experience, having reportees of 15 years as well, right? It's all about potential and how if you are able to grow in the organization. So that's just 2 cents from my side.
Thank you so much. And Karan, yes, please.
Just one thing which I want to add is that I think what I'm noticing is that a lot of developers, right, seem to like riding the wave of like, hey, this is really hot right now, so I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, etc., and kind of keep riding the wave of what's new. But I think it came up in the discussion before as well. The fundamentals are very, very important. If you go back to the fundamentals, I think those are some of the things which might not change much. So I kind of had one of the experiences where I was talking to one of the developer and I said, hey, your algorithm, it looks like it's probably gonna, be like a O of n. And he was like, what's that? And I said, well, did you even study algorithms, or you kind of know what's the bigger notation of optimizing, the performance of your algorithms and how it runs, right? So I think all of technology, all of computing, at least as of now, runs on certain fundamentals that is necessary. As and when the world is growing, there are more and more and more abstractions that are coming up for everyone. So for consumers, there are more and more abstractions that you don't have to deal with a lot of the details. Similarly, even for developers, there are a lot of abstractions that are coming up, right? But the abstractions is just to make it easier for you, but it doesn't mean that you let go of the fundamentals completely and then just keep riding on top of the abstractions. So I think the TLDR there in a nutshell is that keep continuously making your foundations stronger and stronger, because at least in the foreseeable future, at least until quantum computing and things like that becomes a reality, a lot of the foundations for computing itself will still remain the same.
All right. I think we've tried to sum up every aspect here, and we've tried to cover up the ground for be it freshers or people with 10 to 15 years of experience or leaders. I'm just taking one last question because it's been posted 2 times. I think somebody is pretty earnest to know the response. He says, I'm into rings and dolma. I'm into software testing as of now, and I want to shift my career towards web development. Could you guys please guide me with the approach that I should follow? Any expert advice from him for him? Anyone can probably just take up this question.
So I think probably I'll take that question initially. As this is a classic example of reskilling yourself, right? Moving from the so-called software quality engineering, where you build automated solutions for your applications that is going to be released, and then moving out from there to a web development. I think today, right, how the industry is working is 10x engineers, or as I had mentioned, a full stack engineer who does the front end development, does the back end, creates API, connects this, and then releases into production and deploys it. It is definitely a great career to take up ahead if you have, if you have invested your time to actually reskill with the current latest trends or technologies that we have on the front end development. And there are many Udemy courses which definitely you can invest your time on. There are YouTube channels as well, where you can kind of connect and see how you can learn and then start contributing.
Just to add on to
Right.
what Prajita said, right? Most important is once you have done your reskilling, right, start building your internal network, right, and get an IJP.
Yeah.
Start applying for different IJPs and make sure that you grab the position what you want.
All right. I think not just one, but two different sets of perspective for a user here. One question that we get asked many times by a user: we are a community of 4.2 million software professionals, and people keep posting queries in different forums. A very repeated question is, what are the 3 things that all developers must build on or develop as a skill set to get noticed by recruiters? For this, I would like a perspective from all 4 of you. Quickly, 3 things that all developers must learn or develop. Let's probably take a view from Karan, Muthya, and then Tejus, and then of course we'll get back to the others.
Three things. It's like trying to zip thousands of files into a 3 MB one. So I think the first thing is to kind of make your work very visible. I think that's also kind of been a summary which Karan, Bakshi also mentioned about, and everyone else mentioned about. Make your work more visible, and knowing how to do that, right? Even like how Karan, Bakshi also said, I've also seen resumes which are like 3-4 pages and things like that, and then I look for a GitHub link I go to the profile and then look at the report and it's like, oh, okay, now I understood, kind of a thing, right? So making your work very visible and kind of understandable. The second thing also is it kind of really highlighting what is your strength. I've seen most of the times whenever I see any GitHub profiles or resumes, and then the skill sets is like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React Native, that, this, that, binary risk, everything will be there. Kind of really understand. It's almost like SEO, right? I have to think like a Google search engine to kind of figure out what is the thing that you have to pick out and rank and things like that, right? So make what is your strength very, very clear, that I am really good at this. You can ask me anything in this and I can answer, versus I know some of these things and I can work with it, but I'm not good at it, right? So make that distinction very clear as to what are your strengths when it comes to technologies or approaches and things like that. And the third thing is, just in terms of knowing some of the fundamentals which I mentioned about, right? For example, Git as a version control itself is kind of like the basic that any developer or any organization would really look for, right? So kind of knowing some of those and how to work, I think it's all about collaboration, right? And that's one of the philosophy and also the mission of GitHub as well, is to kind of make collaboration much easier, because software today is, and it adds on to what Karan Bakshi also mentioned, is that people management skills, right? Software is never today kind of built in a silo where it's three people put together in a room and say build this, versus it's one person sitting in some part of the world and another person sitting in another part of the world. It's not just about the technology, but also about how you collaborate, how you get things done, how you move along things, and how you deliver a really great product or a service that your customers and their customers also probably can use. So that collaboration and that working with people aspect is very, very, very important. So 3 things, yeah, zipped it into
quickly. Let's hear it from Prajita.
I think I would echo the same when it comes to a developer, who has to pick on 3 things. But to add on one more thing is, how much have you helped enable others, right? That's a very important quality which in today's generation a developer should have, right? You yourself learning and implementing is one part of it, but how much have you enabled 10 others in the organization or in your circle to improve their productivity? I think that's also equally important, that has to be considered. And yes, give real-time examples of challenging situations which you have come across and provided an optimum solution, whether it is optimizing your code or from a process improvement, anything. But any challenging situation should definitely be called upon, because it's one of the important quality that a developer should have. And of course, which I mentioned about having scalability and reliability to whatever you're contributing to is very important.
Thank you, Prajita, for that closing remark. Karan Bakshi, quickly, and then Tejus probably.
I always love hiring freshers, because they don't carry the baggage of experience, right? So when you're joining a new company, right, most important is don't carry a baggage. It's a learning and unlearning phase. So start as a fresher. 3 things which I would like to precise very bullet points. Number 1 is you have to be a great team player, right? Nothing beats a good team player, right? Bring in with a lot of positive attitude, right? And be agile, right? Be open to learning, right? There's a lot of scope and avenues to learning. And everybody, right, including in this room and you all the audiences, thank you so much for being here. It's important as attitude, right, which matters the most. So come with a positive attitude and can-do attitude, finding the solutions rather than problems. So these are 3 things which I would sum it up.
Thank you so much. Moving on to Tejus. What are your closing remarks for us today?
I think my thoughts are very similar to the previous one, right? But I'll take 1 quick minute to talk about 2 points which could look counter to each other. One is the depth that we spoke of earlier. Like pick your spec, go deeper as possible. I think a very good developer will come with the strength of knowing everything that is possible in that particular space as realistically as possible. The other thing, which is extremely opposite of the same thing, is to be on lookout for the newer trends and technologies and socialize yourself with hackathons and coding competitions, so that you don't stick with only one and then it becomes legacy, but you get mastery over it, but also you are on the lookout for overlapping technologies to begin with to something extreme on the other side, so that you are covered as a holistic person.
All right, thank you so much. You guys have been a fabulous panel. I would like to thank my audiences first who signed up for this session, who saw us live, and who posted effervescent questions for our panelists here. Thank you, speakers Karan, Bakshi, Prajita, Tejus, and Karan Muthya for adding insights into this discussion. Thank you. And with this, we're calling it a wraps. I hope you all have a good day and you all have some insights to take back with you. All right, signing off for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, audience.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Good wishes. Happy weekend.